On October 9th, 2020, in Boston, Texas, a police officer was sitting off the side of a highway patrolling traffic. Around this time, it was 9:36 a.m., so the typical 9 to 5 morning rush was starting to slow down a little bit. And the way that the officer was facing, he was facing in the direction of traffic rather than away from traffic, so he can see the cars coming up behind him and then go in front of him. So as he's sitting there, he's just looking at all the drivers. That's when he starts to see up in the distance there's a little bit of commotion going up there. There's people honking their horns, there's people yelling. He notices that there is a silver Toyota Corolla sedan speeding down this road, going the opposite direction of traffic and weaving through people. Once this Toyota speeds past the officer, he turns on his lights, does a U-turn, and starts following the car. Inside the car was 27-year-old Taylor Morton, who, as soon as the officer started following her, she called the police. And when the dispatcher picked up, she immediately started screaming into the phone, saying, quote, "There's a state trooper behind me and I need an ambulance right now." But weirdly, even though there was a police officer right behind Taylor, she was not pulling over at all. There was one point where she got off the highway and went into like normal traffic, but she still did not pull over the car. She at one point almost hit a bicyclist. She almost collided head on with a semi-truck, and then at one point just like put on her hazards. Finally, when she got back on the highway, now going in the right direction, she finally pulled over and the officer pulled over right behind her. When the officer gets out of the car and starts approaching Taylor's car, he can already hear Taylor screaming in the car because she's still on the phone with the police. And as he's approaching the car, that's when he sees Taylor in the driver's seat. Taylor is in the driver's seat of the car and she has blood on her arms, her legs, and her hands. And right by the waistband of her yoga pants, that's when the officer notices that there is an umbilical cord. And attached to that umbilical cord is a newborn baby that is currently laying on Taylor's lap. So when the officer sees this, it's horrific. It's a lot to process because the baby currently isn't making any sounds, isn't moving, and also seems to be gray and blue around the lips. And even while the officer is just staring at Taylor, she's screaming at the officer, saying things like, quote, "You need to take me and my baby to the hospital right now. It's an emergency. Come on." The officer then asks Taylor how old the baby is, and Taylor replies with, "The baby is only maybe like 35 minutes old," which already is a gap in her story. If she did have this baby 35 minutes ago, then why is she just now calling the police and asking them for help? The officer then calls for backup and an ambulance, and as they're standing on the side of the road waiting for the ambulance, that's when another driver drives past them, and in this car was Amanda, who was a registered nurse. As Amanda was driving past them, that's when she saw Taylor in the driver's seat screaming and crying and covered in blood. And in that moment, her instincts just kicked in. So Amanda pulled over to the side of the road, ran to the officer and Taylor to figure out what was going on, and that's when Amanda saw the newborn baby on Taylor's lap. Amanda immediately opened up the driver's side door, took the baby, and noticed that the baby was cold and clammy and blue on only some parts of her body. But Amanda was able to find a very, very weak pulse and started to perform CPR until the ambulance got there. Now, one odd thing that Amanda did notice about this baby, even though Taylor had blood all over her, this baby was oddly very clean. Usually when babies are born, they have things like blood or amniotic fluid on them, but for some reason, this baby was very, very clean, as if she had just been washed beforehand. So when the paramedics got there, they immediately took the baby straight to the hospital, while an EMT, an officer, and Amanda all questioned Taylor on what happened. Amanda asked Taylor when she was due, and Taylor said the 30th. And for context, today it is October 9th. So they're thinking, okay, the baby came a little bit early. But then Taylor says, oh no, not of this month, last month, which would make Taylor about 2 weeks overdue. But when Amanda hears that, she remembers that the baby looked way too small to be an overdue baby. So then they start to ask her a little bit more questions. They start asking her, how did she give birth? And that's when Taylor goes on to say that she was just at Walmart, she knew that she was overdue, and that's when she started to feel a very intense pressure. And immediately she got in the car, and that's when she started driving to the McCurtain Memorial Hospital in Oklahoma, which was that's kind of odd because this was a hospital that was 40 minutes away, and there were 2 more hospitals that were closer to them. And then that's when Taylor goes on to say that at some point in the drive over to the hospital, she just had this urge to push, and then when she did, that's when the baby came out while she was driving. And then after Taylor tells her story, that's when she says, quote, "Can I get this stuff off of me? I want this blood off of me." So Amanda then gives her 2 water bottles, one to drink and one to wash herself down with. At this point, Taylor seems to be acting pretty normal, a little bit more normal than a woman that just gave birth without any sort of painkiller or anything, and also while driving. So that's when the EMT asks, "Do you mind if we look at your injury?" So they then take some surgical scissors to take off her yoga pants, and that's when they found her placenta lying inside of her yoga pants. And when they find her placenta, it obviously shocks them a little bit, but as soon as Taylor notices that they see the placenta, she immediately starts screaming again, and she starts yelling at the EMT requesting to go to the McCurtain Memorial Hospital, to which they did. And as for the baby, she was also currently on her way to the hospital, and at one point the baby did take her first breath. Once the baby was brought to the hospital, she was put straight into the ICU to be replenished with fluids and also to monitor her heartbeat. As for Taylor on the way to the hospital, that's when Amanda started to examine Taylor's body because there really wasn't many injuries, so she just wanted to make sure that everything was still okay internally. Amanda says that she can easily tell if someone's uterus is about to bust, as in it's becoming too full or it's not too full, and you can easily do this by putting 2 fingers on your uterus. There's always a slight pulse to your uterus, but when Amanda put her hand onto Taylor's uterus, she felt no pulse, as if there wasn't a uterus there. And so the only explanation would be is that Taylor didn't have a uterus, but that wouldn't make sense because Taylor just gave birth unless that baby wasn't actually Taylor's. During this time, at around 10:15, police would receive another call from a woman who was crying hysterically over the phone and said to the dispatcher, quote, "Please come help, my daughter has been murdered. There's blood everywhere. Oh my babies, oh my babies." The woman on the phone was the mother of 21-year-old Reagan-Simmons Hancock. Reagan was currently 36 weeks pregnant with her daughter Braxxlyn and was also recently married to her husband Homer. On this day of October 9th at around 8:30 in the morning, while Homer was at work, he started to receive some really odd messages from Reagan. Things saying like she wasn't happy in the marriage anymore and she just feels like she can't do it anymore. And to this, Homer started to get really concerned because these are very scary messages to hear from your wife. He starts to think, okay, maybe it's the pregnancy hormones, maybe she really does mean what she's saying. So he calls Reagan's mom, tells her what's going on and what Reagan had sent to him, and says, "I myself am already on the way back to check on her, but you're a lot closer than I am, so do you mind just stopping over there and seeing if everything's okay?" So that's when Reagan's mom said yeah. Reagan's parents then went over to Reagan's house to check on her. As soon as they got to the front door, they noticed that there was a bloody fingerprint on the doorknob. When they saw that, they got a really terrified feeling. When Reagan's mom opens up the door, she claims that there was blood everywhere, on the floor, on the walls, the furniture was thrown around, and on the floor seemed to be a bloody towel with amniotic fluids on it, and lying right next to the towel was Reagan, who was lying face down with her right arm out and then her other arm underneath her forehead. When the police arrived to Reagan's house and they do an autopsy on Reagan's body, they find that she had been hit several times over the head with a clam hammer. There were over 100 slashes found on her body with both a knife and a scalpel, as well as half of a scalpel being lodged in her neck with a line going across. There was blunt force trauma to the head, multiple skull fractures, and she also had a broken nose. And when they look into Reagan's stomach, they found that her 36-week baby was gone. And it seemed to look as if someone had done a at-home C-section and took the baby right out of Reagan's stomach. And this sort of crime is so horrific and so brutal and so violent. And so the police are completely stunned at who could have done this. The police then investigate the rest of the home to see if whoever had done this was still in the home. They go into the kitchen. That's when they find the sonogram of Braxxlyn on the refrigerator, and right underneath it was a bloody fingerprint. They start to examine the rest of the house, and they ended up finding blood in 5 rooms of the house. Whoever had done this, it was definitely an attack that went into multiple rooms, meaning that Reagan was actively trying to fight this person off. It also seemed like whoever had done this also tried to clean up the crime at one point, because there was a bunch of bloody towels in the sink, and there was also a mix of blood and water all over the kitchen floor. Reagan Hancock was a 21-year-old woman with a little girl of her own and was currently pregnant with her second daughter named Braxxlyn. Reagan was described as such a loving and kind-spirited mother, like Miss Honey, sort of, like from Matilda, very gentle and maternal, just had love for everyone in her heart. And it would make sense that Reagan was just like this because her family was the same exact way. Her and her family were extremely close. They would go on family fishing trips and go see car shows. It seemed like no matter what, if this family, one person were to be going through something, it was like the whole family came together just to help that one person get back up on their feet again. Reagan did have her first daughter on March 5th of 2017, but unfortunately, since she was very young at the time, her and her baby's father did not work out. So for the time being, she was a single mother, but again, given the family that she was given, they all really came together to help Reagan in any possible way that they could. And then later down the line is when Reagan would meet her cowboy sweetheart, Homer Hancock. Homer and Reagan actually used to date on and off in high school, but then they fell out of contact and then randomly met up again as adults at a festival. So through that, they started talking and then they started going on dates and then just quickly fell in love after that. Homer treated Reagan's daughter. They went to carnivals. He would take her to the park. They would go to the beach. Reagan's daughter would even call Homer dad. And so it seemed like they were just such a happy family. And one day when the family was at home, they were just having a chill day, about to head out for the day. Reagan was in one room getting ready while Homer was in the other room getting Reagan's daughter ready for the day. And that's when Homer yells from across the house, "Hey, Reagan, come here and look at her new outfit. Doesn't she look so cute?" And then when Reagan walks in, that's when she sees her daughter wearing a onesie that says, "Mommy, will you marry my daddy?" And after she read that, that's when Homer got down on one knee and proposed to Reagan. And I just love that so much. I love how he was able to incorporate her daughter in such a beautiful, special moment. Reagan obviously said yes and immediately started to plan her wedding. Her theme was sunflowers, which I think just perfectly represents her personality. She wore this gorgeous strapless sweetheart line dress. She had this gorgeous long necklace on. Her hair was pinned up. Even when Homer and Reagan went up to the front and Reagan had said her vows and then Homer had said his vows, he even invited Reagan's daughter up to the front as well and held Reagan's daughter's hand and made vows to her daughter to say that he will always love and protect her the same way that he will for Reagan. And even after their wedding, it seemed like the couple was so in love. They had just gotten their very first house together. They had their second daughter on the way. And so it's so difficult to understand how someone who this family trusted enough to be in their own home would come into their own home and commit such a brutal and violent act to such a sweet and wholesome family. Within the process of getting pregnant, the uterus plays a pretty big role in getting pregnant. It first starts with fertilization and then embryo development and then implantation. The process of implantation is basically where a cell in your body called the blastocyst implants itself into the lining of the uterus, and that is how the baby is formed. So if there is no uterus, then there is no baby. But Taylor, even though she didn't have a uterus, insisted that she was pregnant and she gave birth that morning. And so for those who don't know, say you were to give birth and then the next day go and take a pregnancy test. That pregnancy test will most likely come up positive and say that you are pregnant, even though you know that you're not pregnant. You just gave birth the day before. But the reason why the test comes up positive is because when you're doing at-home urine sample pregnancy test, the test is typically looking for something called HCG cells, and these are cells that come out of your placenta when you are pregnant. There is some HCG that is still left over in your body and typically takes a couple of weeks after giving birth to completely flush out of your body. But when Taylor specifically did a urine sample and a blood sample, both of those tests came back negative for HCG, even though Taylor had just claimed that she gave birth 2 hours prior.
So she shows no signs. You can't check for hemorrhaging. What is HCG?
It's a hormone that is secreted by the placenta only.
Okay.
And if there's a baby in there, the HCG is what the hormone that mandates going and getting the nutrients and bringing it to baby.
Okay.
So it's in mama's blood, mama's urine, mama's everything.
She refuses to have a vaginal check to make sure she's not hemorrhaging. They've done an ultrasound and HCG, and it doesn't show that she's been pregnant. Okay. They have the placenta.
Where's she?
She is in the room. She is
letting her leave.
No.
Taylor then starts yelling at everyone in the room. She is taking so much offense. She's saying, how dare you say that I didn't give birth this morning, and how dare you tell me that I'm not pregnant when I have been pregnant for the past 9 months. But when Taylor eventually agreed to a vaginal exam from the doctor only took about 5 minutes in the exam before leaving the room and just told the officers, no, she did not give birth.
So what happened this morning? Did you just go into labor on the side of the road?
No, I was supposed to ride with my fiance, and we own a hog buying facility, and we were gonna come through here, but I was having contractions and stuff and wasn't feeling good, so I stayed at home and told him we would just meet here after he dropped the hogs at 7. And he got tied up. I mean, he's on his way.
Okay. All right. Now, how did you get here? Did you drive yourself?
No, an ambulance brought
you?
me. Yes,
Oh, okay.
like that.
Oh, okay.
They know that Taylor cannot get pregnant because she doesn't have a uterus. There's no way that she gave birth this morning. So where did this baby come from? The police officers are now investigating her in the room and asking her all these questions. And they are asking her, if we do a DNA on that baby right now, will that baby come up as yours? And to this, Taylor just completely deflects the question and instead says, quote, I had a stroke in 2015. I don't know what happened to me. I don't know why I did it, because I'm really not a bad person. I just really wanted the baby.
Is it the deal you just wanted a baby so bad that it just kind of overpowered your brain and everything?
My head's been hurting.
Your head's been hurting.
I had a stroke in 2015.
Now, a little bit of backstory on Taylor Parker, because this isn't the first time Taylor has lied about something this brutal. Taylor was currently engaged to a man named Wade Griffin, and they have been engaged for about a year at this point. And from Taylor's social medias, especially her Facebook, it seemed like for the past 9 months on Taylor's socials, she has been actively keeping up the persona that she was pregnant. She had a pregnancy photo. She had a baby shower. She even had a gender reveal where she tied a big pink bow to a cattle, and then that cattle came out and revealed the gender of the baby. She was even on Facebook posting things like, quote, okay, I am making my baby registry wish list. As of today at OB-APT, I was informed there would be no way for me to have Clancy vaginal like originally planned. For context, she had named the baby Clancy. I have too many health risks, so we'll be having to do a C-section. My last 2 were natural babies, so this is new to me. Can any of my C-sec mamas lend me any advice of what I need, what helped you along, or what you didn't have that you wish you would have? She was asking for advice on Facebook, and she was also posting pictures of her sonogram. But a lot of these things that she would post to Facebook wouldn't really make sense unless you have been pregnant before. She also had her gender reveal when she was only 12 weeks pregnant, even though you don't really find out the gender of your baby pregnancy until around 18 to 20. And a lot of people in Taylor's inner circle felt like her pregnancy was fake and was even calling her out online. Wade was literally at Taylor's defense anytime someone tried to question it. He had even written on Facebook saying, quote, "I'm glad you're willing to make something for us, Sierra. Everyone thinks that we're faking the whole damn pregnancy with the little one that's not even here yet. Some people I once called friends are going to look so stupid in the weeks to come." And then Taylor replies with, quote, "Couldn't have said it any better than that." And of course, Wade didn't think that this pregnancy was fake, because why would it be fake? She would bring home documents of all of her appointments. She would even bring home sonograms. She had a growing pregnancy bump, and on top of that, she was also on blood thinners because of the medical conditions that came with this pregnancy. She would even post on Facebook saying, quote, "Yes, ma'am, gave me 2 IV doses of blood thinner. Go back tomorrow for a second scan to see if what's left of the claw is breaking up. HOE health nurse going to monitor me. I'm good. Our Clancy Gale is holding out strong too. We'll see OB every day for the next week or 2 with blood results." There's this one specific site, and it's like one of the bigger ones. It's called fakeababy.com, where you can literally buy for as little as $10 a fake pregnancy document, as if you actually went to the doctor, and you can even add little things to it, such as when the test was received from the lab and the doctor's name. Now, this site claims to be a prank site. They claim to be like gotcha. How funny would it be if someone thought that you were pregnant and then you weren't? How funny would it be to trick someone into thinking that they have to commit to a lifelong responsibility? You can even get things from this site like fake sonograms from every single week of pregnancy, and even on the sonogram put more intimate details like a patient number, a physician's name, and even the hospital you went to. I don't really know the legalities of this site, but it seems very, very illegal, because literally anybody could just put down real doctors and real hospitals, and that would literally be forging a document. And you want to know what's even crazier about this site? You can also buy prescription meds off of this site too. What are in the pills? I have no clue. It just comes in a very realistic orange looking bottle that at first glance you would probably think are real pills. Again, I don't know the legalities of this website, but so Taylor then tells the officers that she has 2 other children, a daughter who's 10 and a son who's 6. And that's when the officers reveal to her that they did a test on her uterus, but unfortunately the test failed because she had no uterus. And when they looked into her medical history, they had found that she had actually had a hysterectomy a year prior, meaning the removal of a woman's uterus, basically like tying her tubes. When you remove your uterus, you can no longer get periods, and you can also no longer get pregnant. And again, these lies that Taylor told were lies that she told all the time. These were lies that were dating back until she was about 10 years old. She was showing up to elementary school in full crutches, telling everybody that she broke her ankle, but then the next day just show up completely fine and walking on the ankle. She also, for all 3 years of her middle school, told all of her classmates and all of her teachers that she had cancer, and she was constantly going to medical appointments for it, even though she did not have cancer. And even in high school, Taylor continued to lie. It seemed like in high school, Taylor was either pregnant, thinking that she's pregnant, or had a miscarriage. Now, again, there's no really medical records to back up if she ever did have a miscarriage. There was even one time in high school where there was a girl at Taylor's high school that actually was pregnant and had posted a picture of her belly bump to like her Snapchat story. So Taylor had screenshotted the picture, cropped out the girl's face, and then sent that photo to guys at her school saying, "Look, see, I really am pregnant. This is my belly bump." And again, I don't know why she did this. Taylor would also tell everybody at school that she had a boyfriend. It seemed like she had a boyfriend all the time, but it was more of that kind of thing of like, oh, I have a boyfriend, but he goes to a different school. Because every time people would ask to see pictures, she weirdly would never have any pictures of her boyfriends. And Taylor would even do even weirder things to her friends, such as asking her friends on occasion to send her nudes of them so that she could send those nudes to her boyfriend so that her boyfriend wouldn't find out that Taylor was pregnant. However, Taylor did indeed get pregnant when she was 17. In her senior year, she had dropped out of high school and went on to raise this child. She gave birth to her daughter, daughter, and the baby's father was only 19 at the time and was not ready to be a father. So unfortunately, Taylor had to raise this child on her own. But despite Taylor wanting to be a mother so bad, she barely took care of her daughter. Her daughter was always at a family's house or a friend's house, while Taylor would go out to the bar, she would go out to the club, she would go hang out with friends, she was dating around. And it seemed like the older Taylor got, the more wild her stories and her lies became. It's like she was creating a new character and a new persona for herself every person that she met. She would even go on to tell things to all of her friends, things like, I don't actually say this that often because it's something that I don't really like to talk about, but have you ever heard of the salt Morton? Like the salt in the navy blue container, it's like a girl with an umbrella. That's actually my family's company because my name is Taylor Morton, but I am the next in line to receive the inheritance of $1.7 billion and probably become CEO of the company. So that's something really, really exciting that's happening right now. And also something else that I do is I also work with Shell, the gas station. I work with them and I have a couple of contracts with them because down in Texas, I have a couple of oil fields. So sometimes Shell will want the oil from that field, but all of that was a lie. Taylor was not associated with the Morton Salt Company whatsoever. She was not sitting on $1.7 billion. She did not have contracts with Shell because I don't think Shell is just getting their oil from Taylor. Like, I'm pretty sure they go through like very big companies. Nonetheless, she kept up with these lies, and she also kept 11 fake numbers to keep up with these lies. She was constantly texting herself back and forth all day, sending these screenshots to all of her friends. Look at this deal I just made with Shell. Look at what my attorney's saying. Look at my real estate agent and what she's saying about this new house that I'm closing on. Taylor was purely creating all of this and creating this world only for the other people around her, because Taylor knew that it was just her talking back and forth with herself, but she purposely did this to sort of bend the reality of other people around her, because people around her are going to think, why would she lie about this extravagantly? Why would she have 11 fake numbers? Like, this has to be real. This can't be fake. This is just way too much to be fake. But in reality, it really was just all fake. She would also go on to tell people that she suffered with many conditions such as anxiety, depression, migraines, epilepsy, and MS, and even helped create an MS support group with 2 other women that actually had MS and got matching tattoos with them. Now, as you can see, Taylor is a massive pathological liar, so none of this was true, and she also didn't have MS, and over time, these 2 girls started to notice very weird things about Taylor. Taylor would do things such as fake hospital visits just so that she would have her friends by her bedside to support her, and then she would just be out the next day completely fine. They would also notice that Taylor was on Facebook posting things about her being a nurse, and then would talk about all these crazy nursing stories that she had, even though Taylor was not a nurse. There was also one instance where one of the girls that Taylor had created this MS support group with, one of the girls had opened up to Taylor about a really traumatic car accident that she went through. And one day, this girl is just scrolling through Facebook and she reads a post from Taylor where Taylor is detail for detail explaining this girl's traumatic car accident, but switching the narrative to make it sound like Taylor was experiencing it and not the girl. In 2011, Taylor ended up marrying a man named Tommy, and when she married Tommy, she gave him the same story, how she was a part of the Morton family heiress and she was a part of this huge salt company and she was sitting on $1.7 billion. But even though she claimed to have such a wealthy family and have all of this money in her bank account, she would also turn around and then apply for food stamps, claiming she had no money, and then beg her grandmother to give her money. Taylor was also constantly cheating in the relationship with Tommy, and every time Tommy would call her out about her cheating, Taylor would immediately switch the conversation and say that the only reason she was cheating was because Tommy was abusing her. And then a year into Taylor and Tommy's relationship, that's when Taylor would grow pregnant with her son and actually give birth to her son. But again, similar to her daughter, unfortunately, unfortunately, Taylor just didn't really take care of her son at all. And then even when her and Tommy got a divorce, her kids went to go live with Tommy's family. And then just 11 days after her divorce was finalized with Tommy, she would go on and marry a new man by the name of Hunter Parker. Now, when it came to Hunter, Taylor did not give Hunter the same story that she told Tommy. She didn't say that she was an heiress of a salt company, so she completely changes her persona. And now she is this sweet Southern Texan lady. She also claimed to be a nurse and worked in the surgical unit of an OBGYN. And this is a character she really followed in through. She was during this time always wearing scrubs. She always had a first aid kit on her, but not a normal first aid kit with band-aids and alcohol pads. It was a first aid kit with things like surgical equipment, like scalpels and syringes and liquid stitches. She also started to speak in a very heightened Southern accent, kind of changing her accent a little bit. And even to Hunter and every person that Hunter introduced her to, she would go on to say that she had stage 4 uterine cancer and can't have children because of it. And even at one point, she had offered 2 of Hunter's friends, Hunter's girl, female friends, she had offered them each $100,000 to be the surrogate for her child, but both of these women had turned down the offer. There was this one time where Taylor's friend was pregnant, so Taylor went with her to figure out the gender of the baby at her ultrasound. And when the doctor had told her friend that she was having a girl, that's when Taylor started crying, and she looked to her friend and she said, "Oh my God, would you like to be my surrogate?" And the woman was like, "No, I'm married with kids and I didn't have this kid for you." Hello everyone, it's still me, thanking the sponsor of today's episode, IQ Bar, our exclusive snack sponsor. IQ Bar is the better for you plant protein based snacks made with brain boosting nutrients to refuel, nourish, and satisfy hunger without the sugar crash. IQ Bar's plant protein bars are packed with high quality ingredients to keep you physically and mentally fit. It's completely free from gluten, dairy, soy, GMOs, and artificial sweeteners for a natural anytime snack. You can try their 9 delicious flavors including mint chocolate chip, chocolate sea salt, banana nut, toasted coconut chip, lemon blueberry, and peanut butter chip. I've personally been obsessed with IQ Bar recently. I feel like I'm a very big snack person, and sometimes when I'm grabbing snacks throughout the day, I just kind of grab something and I don't really think about if that snack is good for me, but I feel like with IQ Bar, I never have to think that way, and my personal favorite flavor is the peanut butter chip. With over 20,000 5-star reviews and counting, more people than ever are starting their days on the right foot with IQ Bar's brain and body boosting bars, hydration mixes, and mushroom coffees. And right now, IQ Bar is offering our special podcast listeners 20% off all IQ Bar products plus free shipping. To get your 20% off, text BEHIND to 64,000, text BEHIND to 64,000, that's BEHIND to 64,000, message and data rates may apply, see term for details. Eventually, Hunter and Taylor would also get into a divorce, and then Taylor would move on to her next man/fiance, Wade Griffin. At this point, both of Taylor's children are living full-time at Tommy's house, and again, it seemed like Taylor did not really take care of her kids at all. There was even this one time when her son was still a baby, she had dropped him off at Tommy's family's house, and when they went to go change his diaper, they noticed that he had a huge infection all over his back, and that was because Taylor hadn't changed his diaper in 5 days. Now, since Taylor didn't have a diploma, she wasn't a nurse, she wasn't an heiress, she wasn't an owner of oil fields, how exactly did Taylor get money then? She had a couple of office jobs every now and then, but most of her money came in through scams. One of her most famous scams was being a photographer. So usually if you were to hire a photographer for some sort of event like a birthday shoot, a pregnancy shoot, a graduation, usually the photographer will request request half of the money before the shoot and then the other half of the money after the shoot. But in Taylor's case, they would give her the first half of the money and then she would completely ghost them and just keep the money. And Taylor, again, kind of going along with her pathological liar nature, she would lie about very, very simple things. There was this one time where she randomly lied saying that she never had Chick-fil-A before, even though she had been seen multiple times having Chick-fil-A before. And then there was also another time where she randomly said that she was a natural blonde, even though she was a natural brunette. She was working at one of her office jobs when one of her coworkers started having a medical emergency. So Taylor ran over to her coworker and told everyone, yelled, "Back up everyone, I'm a nurse," and started doing, like, I guess, things that may have helped the situation. And then finally, when the paramedics got there, they took him to the hospital. And then after that, Taylor then wrote on her Facebook, quote, "I've been out of the medical field for a bit. That was the adrenaline rush I used to love. It's all prior knowledge and quick thinking. My employee is in the ICU right now." Which employee? Crazy term to use. That is her coworker. And also, she was never a nurse. And that's when Taylor would also go on to tell Wade crazy stories about her mother, Shauna. Taylor would paint this story to Wade that her mom, Shauna, is this crazy woman that's always out to get her. Taylor had told Wade that Shauna at one point had tried to hire a hitman on Taylor and tried to kill her so that she wouldn't get her $1.7 billion inheritance. She would also claim that her mother was into cartel and was doing a bunch of under the table deals. And then one day, that's when Taylor goes up to Wade crying her eyes out and she says, "You'll never believe it. My mom was arrested for all of her networking within the cartel. And then when she was put into prison, she offed herself and now my mom's dead." So to this, Wade is freaking out because Taylor had just lost her mother in the most traumatic way. And then 2 months after that, Taylor then takes Wade to a family Christmas party at her house, like at her family's house. And this was the first time that Wade was meeting her family. So when Wade walks in the door, he sees Taylor's family for the first time, and standing in front of the door staring at them is Shauna, Taylor's mother, who Wade at this point thinks is dead and thinks has been dead for the past 2 months. But then Taylor just walks up to her so casually, "Oh my God, hi mom, how is everything?" And then Wade just sits there and awkwardly introduces himself again in the back of his head, thinking that she was dead. All of that was a lie. Turns out, her mom was a pretty normal woman. Taylor never brought it up again, and Wade never really asked questions either. Taylor would also do specific things to taunt Wade specifically, such as making fake email accounts, pretending to be her uncle. So Taylor was pretending to be her uncle, and she would be emailing things to Wade, such as, quote, "I hope that fat little B likes being in debt for someone who doesn't even want her. Congratulations on your amazing life, guys. Now I get to watch Wade leave Taylor, and when he does, Taylor will have nothing." Now, as for Wade, what he did for work, he was actually working at a roofing company, and then on the side, he would sell pigs and hogs to a meat processing plant. But with Taylor, she was very good at manipulating people, especially manipulating people to stay, even if they didn't want to stay. And one of Taylor's big things was love bombing. And this is something that you'll see come up later on in the story as well. Because when Taylor first met Wade's mom, she noticed that Wade's mom wasn't really driving that nice of a car. So randomly, one day, Taylor just flat out buys Wade's mom a car, a $32,000 Nissan car. And of course, Wade's mom is over the moon. She is obsessed with it because she just got a new car. And then a month later, Taylor calls Wade's mom and says, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry, but the dealership just called me. There was a huge recall on the car. I need you to drive it over to my house right now so I could take it to the dealership and they could fix it." Weeks went by and there was nothing from Taylor. Even when Wade's mom was reaching out to Taylor, "Hey, is everything okay with my car? Where's my car?" Taylor just would not respond. And it got to a point where Wade's mom had called the dealership to ask about the car. And the dealership said that specific VIN number, there was no recall on that car. That car was actually repossessed due to non down payment. So apparently at some point, Taylor had walked into the car dealership and somehow, like inventing Anna, manipulated her way to just drive the car off the lot without paying a dime. But then after the car fell through, there was obviously a lot of tension in the family after this, so Taylor needed to fix that. So one day she goes over to Wade's family party and she pops up with 6 envelopes, and in the envelopes it was a map of a plot of land called Pecan Point. So the family all open up this envelope, they look at Pecan Point, which is a huge plot of land about equivalent to 5,000 football fields, costs about $4.7 million. And as Wade's family is looking up at Taylor's thinking, what is this? What are we looking at? That's when Taylor flat out says, surprise everyone, I actually bought this piece of land for you guys. I just had a deal come through with Shell. It was $3.2 million and I bought the land for you guys because I want us to all build houses on it and then we can all live together as one happy family. The family, of course, is over the moon. They're doing backflips because, again, who would lie about something this extravagant? Taylor would, because this was all a lie. She had no contract with Shell. She did not have the money. All of her money came through scams. But nonetheless, the next day, Taylor would take out Wade to go see the plot of land and even meet with the guy to go out and see the plot of land. And that's when the guy had told Taylor, okay, well, since you're serious about buying this plot of land, what we're going to need is $200,000 down payment. And this is basically earnest money. So this is basically you giving money to the person to show that you are serious about this investment, which is pretty normal if you're buying any sort of land or property like a home. Taylor just says, oh yeah, $200,000, that's completely fine. I'll get that to you the end of the week. And then throughout that week, she continued to bring Wade's family. She brought her own kids. She brought Wade. They were taking pictures on this plot of land, thinking that they were going to buy this plot of land. But again, it was all fake. It was literally just for Taylor to see the false joy on everyone else's faces, knowing in the back of her head that they were never going to get the land. But on this day, when the whole family was out there going to see the land, that's when Wade's mom would receive a really weird phone call. It was from an anonymous number, and when she picked it up, that's when they had said to her over the phone, quote, Taylor is a pathological liar, and whatever she's saying, don't believe her, and don't confront her either, or else she'll just say that she's pregnant. Which is a very, very odd thing to say, and when the mom heard this, she did not know what that meant. She didn't really know what to make of it because she was currently out at this plot of land with Taylor. And on this day, Wade's mom also started to notice some really odd things about Taylor's behavior. Like, as I said, Taylor's kids were both there taking pictures on the land, and Taylor's son really, really wanted to be in the pictures and was literally crying because he wanted to be in the picture so bad, but for some reason Taylor wouldn't let him in the pictures. But then after this plot of land eventually fell through, that's when Taylor announced to the family that she was pregnant. And Wade's mom to this had a deep set feeling that something was wrong, especially after that crazy phone call that she got. She starts questioning Wade and she says, well, have you ever been to any of her appointments? And Wade says, no, mom, it's 2020 and if she's pregnant, it's COVID, and so they're not allowing anyone else in the room besides the doctor and the woman. So Wade's mom asks him, okay, well, have you ever seen her stomach? And Wade says, well, not her bare stomach, it's just she's been having a really rough pregnancy and I don't even think she feels comfortable showing me her body yet. She would even post pictures of sonograms on her Facebook saying things like, quote, our sweet girl is measuring 2 pounds and 2 ounces today. She is definitely handling everything like a champ. Her measurements came back good. Heartbeat running slower than normal since they have her mama on a heart pill. We were scheduled to have our full 3D ultrasound July 30th. And after seeing this sweet face today, I cannot wait. Hashtag Clancy Gale, in quotes, she is tiny but fierce. And so as Taylor is posting all of these things about her doctor visit, she's also posting and tagging the medical clinic that she's going to. And the medical clinic that she's tagging was a medical clinic that she actually used to be a receptionist at. But as you know, there is no pregnancy, so that means there is no appointment. But the medical facility, the clinic, couldn't just flat out say very publicly, you didn't come to our clinic, stop saying that, because that's against HIPAA violation. They instead just DM'd her and said, hey, can you stop tagging us in all of these fake appointments? Like, we have nothing to do with this. And that's when Taylor deflects the question again and just says, well, if you do like call me out for anything, just please don't give my phone number to my mom. My mom is a crazy woman and she's actually even hired a hitman for me before, and I'm constantly running away from her. So please, if you ever say anything, no matter what you do, just don't give my phone number to my mom. Completely like not the question. Like, it could have just been a yes or a no. So one day when Tommy is watching the kids, that's when her son starts talking about his mommy's new baby and his mommy's new baby girl. But when Tommy hears this, he gets a very deep pit in his stomach because he knows that makes no sense, the fact that she's pregnant. Because when Tommy and Taylor were together, she actually had a hysterectomy.
I'm just going to be upfront with you. I've been talking to the DA down in Booty County, and they've been working on a case down there. And we know that you had a hysterectomy some time back, and that you claimed to be pregnant for a while, but that you really weren't. So we're trying to figure out where this baby came from. But you didn't give birth this morning.
What do you mean?
That's what I just said. You didn't give birth this morning. And we want to know where this baby came from. So what happened?
I just told y'all what happened.
Okay. What's the doctor going to find when he comes in and checks you? Is he going to find you just gave birth? They can tell. When he looks, he can tell in about a second if you gave birth or not.
Okay.
So, as I mentioned, a hysterectomy is the procedure of when a woman's uterus is taken out of her body, and this leads to no periods and cannot get pregnant. It is quite literally impossible for you to get pregnant without a uterus, and even if you do, the pregnancy is extremely, extremely dangerous. So when Tommy heard that Taylor was pregnant, this was a complete shock because, again, the hysterectomy, and also Taylor's mom, Shauna, was there too during the hysterectomy to witness this. So now September 30th, 2022, about 2 weeks before the murder and also the day of Taylor's due date. Taylor walks into the clinic, makes an appointment, fills out the paperwork, and when she hands over the paperwork back to the nurse tells Taylor, okay, perfect, we'll get the ultrasound ready for you right now. But for some reason, when Taylor heard the word ultrasound, she flipped out and just told the nurse, quote, my husband is dead and I just can't do this right now because my mom is in here. And then she just turned around and left. But the weird thing is that she didn't walk out to her car and leave completely. She actually just stood outside of the clinic for 2 hours, just stood there. She was on her phone. Every person that walked in and out of the clinic, she'd be staring them down, looking at them, and then texting something on her phone. And basically what she was doing when like police found her notes app, they find out that Taylor had been basically writing down all of the license plate numbers of all of the women coming in and out of the clinic, looking up their license plate number on a public license plate scanner forum where they lived, their names, their Facebook. And one of the women that she sees walk into this clinic was 21-year-old Reagan-Simmons. Now, Taylor actually knew Reagan already from a year prior, back in 2019. When I was showing you Reagan's wedding photos, as I said, the whole wedding seemed so magical. But the only unsettling part about the wedding was the person taking these photos, who was Taylor Morden. Back in the summer of 2019, I'm not sure if it was Taylor that reached out to Reagan or Reagan reached out to Taylor, but they had connected, and then over time is when Reagan mentioned that she didn't have a wedding photographer, and Taylor had that little side business where she was like a photographer. But in this situation, Taylor actually did show up. She went to Reagan's wedding and she photographed photographed the entire event. So now, a year later, is when Taylor reconnects with Reagan on Facebook. She just messages her on Facebook and is like, oh my God, I know, long time no speak, but I actually just saw your post and I saw that you're having a girl, which is crazy because I'm having a girl as well and we live so close. Why don't we be friends? So now we're getting into the days leading up to the crime and the actual crime itself. October 5th, 2020, around 4 a.m., Taylor wakes up Wade in the middle of the night telling him that the house was on fire. There was like a small portion of the hallway where they had like plastic wrap on the ground and that was on fire. Thankfully, at this point, the fire was small enough and didn't really spread that Wade was able to just take a fire extinguisher and put it out. But unfortunately, due to this fire, they had busted a water pipe, so they did not have any water. But also around this time, it was like 5:30 in the morning. So Wade didn't really care. He was like, okay, at least the fire is out. Let me just go to bed. After he goes to sleep, I don't know why, because I'm assuming Taylor probably started that fire. After this, Taylor would get up out of bed, go to the next room, go on her phone, get on like a voice changer to change her voice, call the hospital, the local hospital that's close to her. She gets on the phone with this voice changer and she says, there's a bomb in the hospital, and then just hangs up. And then after that, she walks back in the bedroom. She wakes up Wade. She's like, Wade, you're never going to believe it. They're not going to induce me today. There's a bomb threat. Somebody like called in. So they're like evacuating the whole building right now. And then she just turns over and goes back to sleep. The next day on October 6, 2020, as I said, due to the fire, they had busted a water pipe. So currently they had no water. So they decided to go over to Wade's parents' house so that they could shower at their house. While Wade was there visiting his mom, unfortunately, him and his mom got into a pretty heated argument because at this point, it's about a week past Taylor's due date. She was supposed to be due on September 30th and it's now October 6th. So now Wade and his mom is getting into an argument, and that's when Wade's mom just flat out says, quote, Wade, I don't think she's pregnant. And Wade just blows up on his mom. I can't believe you would even doubt something like this. This is crazy. And he storms out the house. But even though Wade storms out the house and says all that to his mom, something in Wade also feels that there's something going on. It's a week past her due date. She still hasn't given birth yet. And at this point, I think Wade is just really tired of it all. He honestly just wants the baby out in the world already, just so that he could show everyone that he actually does have a daughter and that it wasn't actually fake. So that night he goes home and he has a sit down conversation with Taylor. And he says to her, look, I'll be by your side through everything, but I just need proof that there's a baby. And that's when Taylor blows up. She even spits in his face and says, how dare you? When I have this baby in a couple days, you are gonna feel so stupid and so sorry that you ever doubted me or your daughter. The next day on October 7th, 2020, Reagan and Taylor decide to hang out with each other one-on-one. Taylor brings her over a little gift and also a Starbucks drink, and they go over there, they hang out, they talk for hours, and Reagan appreciated the company of Taylor so much that even after Taylor left, Reagan had posted to her Facebook adding Taylor saying, quote, so glad I got to see you today. I miss you bunches. Also, thank you for the sweet gift and the Starbucks. October 8th, 2020, the very next day, Reagan and Taylor hang out once again. This time, Taylor comes over to the home around 8 p.m. and they basically sit in Reagan's room and talk for about 2 hours. And around 10 p.m., that's when Homer, because at this point, like Reagan was home with her daughter and her husband, Homer had to go to bed because he had work the next morning. So he was walking up to the door and kind of listening in on the conversation before knocking. And what he overheard was Taylor talking. And Taylor was basically saying to Reagan, oh my God, I cannot wait until I have my baby tomorrow. I just can't wait to just stop being pregnant and just have my baby already. And so after this, around 10 p.m. is when Taylor goes back home. So later on that night, now technically it's October 9th, but it's still a continuation of this same night. Taylor randomly wakes up Wade at 4 in the morning, and I'm laughing because I just think it's so crazy how this woman like just wakes up this man in all hours of the night. The house is on fire. There's a bomb threat to the hospital. But nonetheless, Taylor wakes him up at 4 in the morning and basically tells him, oh my God, I forgot to tell you, I had made a deal with this guy about 4 hours away, and I had made a deal to sell some hogs to him. So you need to get up and go over to his house to bring him all of these hogs and pigs. And so Taylor shows Wade text message conversations of this guy's name, of this guy's address, and where to drop the hogs off. So when Wade sees that, he gets up, he gets all the hogs onto the truck and drives 4 hours away to the location. But when Wade got to the location, it was a bit odd because when he showed up, the man at the door was very surprised. It was 8 a.m. at this point, and he's like, I did not buy any hogs. And Wade is sitting confused. He's like, wait, you didn't text my wife this morning? And he shows him the text messages that Taylor had showed him, and the guy is looking at it confused. That is my name, and that is my address, but that is not my phone number. Man actually did end up buying hogs off of Wade, mostly because he felt bad that Wade had driven out all this way. And then as Wade got back in the car, he went to go 4 hours back home, but then on his way home is when he gets a call from Taylor saying that she had the baby and she's currently in the hospital. Now, the reason why Taylor wanted Wade out of the house that morning was shown through Taylor's search history. Right after he left at 4 in the morning, her search history showed her searching up things such as C-sections, preterm babies, infant exams of babies at 35 weeks, not because she was 35 weeks, but because Reagan was 35 weeks. Taylor also started looking into the probability of a 35-week-old baby surviving an early birth, and a lot of the articles and videos said yes, it is very, very dangerous to have a baby at 35 weeks, but it's definitely not impossible to save the baby. So at 7:30 a.m. that morning, that's when Taylor shows up to Reagan's house uninvited and tells Reagan that the water is out at her house and she really needs a shower, so she was wondering if she could borrow Reagan's shower. Homer was at work and Reagan was just at home with her daughter, so Reagan's like, of course, yeah, you can use my shower. At this point, they've been seeing each other for 3 days straight, so they're just kind of like becoming really, really close friends. Taylor did go inside and end up taking a shower, but unfortunately, after Taylor's shower, we really don't know what exactly happened because frustratingly enough, Taylor pleads not guilty to all of this. She claims she didn't do anything. Again, we will get into that later, but unfortunately, since she did plead not guilty, we don't really know the full story of what happened. All we can do is kind of assume what happened based upon the crime scene and Reagan's body. So it is suspected that when Taylor got out the shower, Taylor had basically hit Reagan across the head multiple times with a clam hammer. After this, Reagan and Taylor continued to fight through 5 different rooms of the house, a continuous fight. Within this struggle, that is when Reagan got all of her injuries, including other injuries like a broken nose, multiple skull fractures, blunt force from a hammer. All of these injuries happened during the attack, and so it was suspected that at some point during the attack is when Taylor had started what seemed to be an at-home C-section, because Taylor also kept around that first aid kit. She used all of that surgical equipment to complete this C-section. After she had completed the C-section, that is when she took the baby and started to clean the baby off with water. Now, Taylor is not a nurse. She's never been a nurse. She has no clue what she's doing. She's purely just doing what she saw someone else on a video do. So obviously, there are a lot of things happening that Taylor is not understanding. Suspected at this point, Taylor knew that she wanted the baby from Reagan, but didn't comprehend that Reagan would be dead as a result of that. So she frantically starts to clean up the crime scene. There's bloody towels in the sink that she just leaves there, and that is why when the police pulled her over, there was that 35-minute gap. During that 35 minutes, she was trying to clean off herself, the baby, and the crime scene. Taylor did eventually leave with Reagan's baby and just had Reagan's baby on her lap as she was driving. She also stole Reagan's phone and started sending all of those weird text messages at around 8:30 a.m. to Homer that prompted Homer to call Reagan's parents so that Reagan's parents can go over there and check on her. But after sending those messages to Homer, that's when Taylor just literally threw Reagan's phone out the window, and even to this day, her phone has never been recovered. And as I had mentioned earlier, on the way to the hospital, Braxxlyn, Reagan's baby, was actually able to take her first breath, and then when she was in the ICU being monitored, unfortunately her pulse just started to grow weaker and weaker. That day, on October 9th at 1:22 p.m. is when Braxxlyn was declared as deceased, and her cause of death, homicide from a traumatic extraction from the uterus, as well as maternal homicide caused by blunt force and sharp force trauma. So when police are back in the hospital room interviewing Taylor, trying to get her to confess to what she did, they know that that baby is not hers. They know that Taylor knew Reagan. They know that this baby is most likely Reagan's child. They just want to know what exactly happened. And so Taylor continues to say, quote, "I didn't kill anybody. I didn't kill anybody on the side of the road." At first, the police had told her we had found the body of a woman without the baby inside of her stomach on the side of the road. And even though Reagan's body was at her house and not on the side of the road, sometimes police officers will say that to suspects, because if someone is telling you the incorrect story, you know the correct story. It's kind of an instinct to correct them. Well, actually, she wasn't on the side of the road. She was at home the last time I saw her. And then that would kind of give away that you know more than you're letting on. And then eventually is when Taylor starts to tell police her version of events. Taylor goes on to say that Taylor and Reagan had gotten into a huge argument because Reagan was questioning Taylor's pregnancy. After this, they got into a huge argument, and that argument led Reagan to fall, and when Reagan fell, she had hit her head and her head started bleeding. Taylor said that she rushed over to her, tried to help her, but noticed that Reagan was starting to pass away. And in Reagan's final words, that's when she said to Taylor, "Save my baby." And then Taylor, in that moment, did what she had to do and started to perform an at-home C-section, Reagan's supposedly dying wish. And for some reason, Taylor did this instead of calling the police or calling an ambulance. Taylor didn't do any of that. She performed this C-section. She stole Reagan's baby right out of her stomach, and then she just left. She just left Reagan there. And on top of that, as I mentioned, Reagan's daughter was there, and she heard, and it was said that at one point her daughter had even tried to come out of her bedroom with a broom before Taylor yelled at her to get back in her room. So after all of this, the police knew that Taylor was lying and was trying to make herself sound like some sort of hero. So that day was then arrested for the double homicide of Braxxlyn and Reagan. As for the trial, as I mentioned, Taylor had pled not guilty. She was still going with that same story, basically saying that she was just doing what Reagan told her to do and what Reagan wanted her to do. During her trial, it was 2021, so people were still required to wear COVID masks, and Taylor showed up with a mask with sunflowers on it, like from Reagan's wedding, as a way to remember Reagan, even though this is literally all Taylor's fault. This is all Taylor's fault. Taylor is a murderer. She requires absolutely no sympathy. She didn't do any good for anyone. When Taylor's family was there to basically vouch for her, Taylor's mom went up to the stand, Shauna, and she was just like, "I think Taylor is a great person. She had a perfectly normal childhood. Everything about her is super well-rounded." Honestly, the only time she really did get weird was after her hysterectomy. Even though I looked into it, there's really no studies found that like after getting a hysterectomy, you get weird, whatever that means. But when Taylor's brother and sister went up to the stand, they had a completely different story to tell. They said that all three of their childhoods growing up was extremely rough. Their mother, Shauna, and their biological dad was constantly fighting, constantly yelling. They would hit each other in front of the kids. There were very rare moments in the household where someone wasn't yelling at someone. Their biological dad was also very heavily abusing drugs, and specifically Fenty and Snow. So those were the two that he would do all the time, and would even take his kids out to go pick up these drugs at people's houses. He would even and smoke and do these drugs with his kids right next to him. And this was the life that Taylor grew up into. Right now, Taylor was currently being charged with the murder of Braxxlyn, the murder of Reagan, and also the kidnapping of Braxxlyn. And Taylor's defense team was really trying to get the kidnapping charges dropped, because if the kidnapping charges were dropped, then that means Taylor would only have to do life in prison. But if the kidnapping charges stay on there, then Taylor would have to get the death penalty and sit on death row. But the prosecutors bring up a really odd detail from when Taylor was awaiting trial in prison. Taylor had actually written a letter to the FBI, basically saying how she feels like she could be like a good asset to them. She goes on to tell in her letter that she's great at manipulating people. She basically runs the jail, and she also has the ability to sexually hypnotize men and women, and basically just ask the FBI for a job as if she's Leonardo DiCaprio from Catch Me If You Can. Taylor literally has nothing to her. Like, Taylor has done nothing with her life. Every life that she has created was a lie. Nothing about her is real. She's never been a nurse. She's never had oil lands. That is not the reality of Taylor whatsoever. The reality of Taylor is based upon all of her lies. Taylor is quite literally saying in her letter that she is good at manipulation and she knows how to get her way regardless of what she has to do. Now, I quickly did want to touch on the psychology of pathological liars, because I feel like when it comes to pathological liars, a lot of people deem them as people who lie because they want sympathy or they want attention. And yes, those are two contributing factors, but I don't believe it's the only reason. There's a lot of people who declare themselves as pathological liars and then they admit that they know what they're doing is wrong, and then they end up getting better and not lying to people anymore. Because if you want attention and if you want sympathy, what exactly signals in your brain for you to feel that way? And what exactly happens in the brain of a pathological liar when they lie? So this is something that I was looking into, and I found a study that happened a couple of years ago. It was a study done by two guys named Liang Yang and Adrian Rain. They basically did this study where they took 12 people, 11 of them were men and one of them were women, and they were all diagnosed pathological liars, and they interviewed each person and hooked them up to a monitor to monitor their brain and see what exactly happened every time this pathological liar were to lie. And what they found is when a pathological liar lies, in their prefrontal cortex, their density of white matter starts to increase. Now, for those who don't know, your prefrontal cortex is the front of your brain, and it's pretty much the most important part of your brain. It has to do with things like planning, decision making, and emotional control. And everyone has white matter in their head. It's very, very important. White matter is basically what connects all of the parts of your brain together. But what they found is when a pathological liar lies, they actually have an increase of white matter in their prefrontal cortex. When they lie, they are now creating new pathways in their brain to start to connect the dots and start to create and craft a more cohesive lie, and a lie that makes sense and is believable. And so you're probably also wondering, does a pathological liar feel bad when they lie? Typically, not really, purely because they really can't feel bad when a pathological liar lies. So, for example, a person who isn't a pathological liar, when we lie, we typically get overwhelmed with negative emotions that we have associated with dishonesty. So whenever we lie to someone, whether it be a big lie or a small lie, we can't help it, but in our brain, our amygdala, which is a part of our brain responsible for all of like our emotions, such as fear and anxiety, our amygdala starts to heighten as soon as we lie. When we lie, we start to become a little bit guilty. We start to stress. It doesn't matter how calm and collected you are on the outside, you cannot help it if your emotions are starting to rise. That leads to you feeling guilty. You feel stressed. You're feeling, oh, what am I gonna say? They just brought up a really good point. How do I counteract that? But wait, what if they know that I'm lying? What if the other person already knows something that I don't don't know that they know. And then they're just asking me all these questions to test me to see if I'm lying. But if they already know that I'm lying, then why are they even talking to me right now? That is fear. That is anxiety. That is what your amygdala does when you are lying to someone. It's very hard to come up with cohesive lies. Does a pathological liar feel bad whenever they lie? Typically, no, because studies have found that when a pathological liar lies, the reason why the density of their white matter increases is because their amygdala decreases. And this usually happens when you lie so much every single day. You're lying about everything. You're lying about silly things like, oh, I've never had Chick-fil-A before. You are slowly starting to desensitize yourself to the negative emotions associated with dishonesty. So if me or you were to lie, we would feel the emotional effects of it because it's something that we don't feel comfortable doing. It's something that we know in the back of our head is wrong, and our emotions are going to let us know that it's wrong. But if you are constantly lying every single day, it becomes a part of your usual routine. It's just something that comes out of your mouth. You can't even help it anymore. And then over time, that pathological liar will also later believe their own lies and not really know what is reality and what is their lies. So instead of the person speaking with emotion, the pathological liar, they are now speaking more with logic, which it sounds like a good thing, but when you're lying and you're trying to manipulate the other person, it's kind of like being super smart in an evil sort of way. And as I mentioned, the two men, one of the men, Adrian, who was conducting this study, he had actually mentioned in his study, quote, "It's almost like mind reading. You have to be able to understand the mindset of the other person. You also have to suppress your emotions or regulate them because you don't want to appear nervous. There's quite a lot to do there. You've got to suppress the truth. Our argument is that the more networking there is in the prefrontal cortex, meaning the more density of the white matter, the more the person has the upper hand in lying. Their verbal skills are higher. They've almost got a natural advantage. Pathological liars have a surplus of white matter and a deficit of gray matter." For context, gray matter has to do with your amygdala and your emotions. This means that they have more tools to lie, coupled with fewer moral restraints than normal people. They've got the equipment to lie, but they don't have the restraint that the rest of us have in telling lies. So then on November 9th, about 8 days after Braxxlyn would have been born, that's when Taylor was given the death penalty and is currently awaiting death row for 12 years until her official death penalty. Even while Taylor is on death row, she clearly still doesn't care about what she did or the lives that she took or the families that she tore apart and ruined and lied to. She seems to not really care at all because in prison she's currently looking for sugar daddies and even emailed to one of her friends saying, quote, "I need me a rich man to load me up on some money on this damn thing. I need a pen pal. I need some men to talk to. I'm telling you, it's boring as hell in here." Reagan's family also did have a memorial for Reagan and Braxxlyn outside the family home, where at the memorial you could see sunflowers all over the place. That is the end of today's case. I hope you guys found this case interesting, and if you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. And I'm so sorry, but my camera died, but thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye!